When you look at the present situation with COVID, one in which we are now faced with easily the most significant challenge that this country has ever seen, we still cannot get our political opponents to join us in the fight to get people vaccinated. Several of them would have gotten vaccinated because they're very vulnerable. So they have taken a personal decision to get vaccinated. But they continue to subtly undermine the vaccination process. So they'll make comments to the extent that the people do not trust us. They don't trust the government, so they're not getting vaccinated. But in terms of putting energy in the fight and to literally educate our people about how serious it is and how important it is to get vaccinated, who are not on the fence are literally using subterfuge to undermine the vaccination process. But before I close this evening, I want to make a final appeal to you this evening on the issue of vaccinations. And I want you to understand the consequences of us not achieving herd immunity. I want you to understand that if the vaccination process continues to move at slow pace, and within the next several weeks we do not achieve herd immunity, that we will be exposing this country to perhaps a third and more deadly wave of COVID. One that will result in possible lockdowns, more deaths, and more hospitalizations. We saw what is happening in Trinidad and Tobago. Just today, Trinidad had over 600 COVID cases, new COVID cases in a single day, and 23 deaths. We have an obligation as leaders of this great institution and this administration to educate our people about potential consequences. The government is struggling to meet its obligations. And the more this situation protracts, not only you'll have significant hospitalizations and deaths, but there will come a time when the government will not be able to meet certain obligations, including the payment of salaries and wages. And for some reason, our people seem not to be connecting the dots. And when we make these statements a fact to educate the public about consequences, our political opponents, they spin what we say and suggest that we are threatening people's pay as well as their pensions. We're telling you what the consequences are likely to be. On a daily basis, I get a report of the revenue intake. And I can tell you that the revenue intake for May, in essence, will be the worst for this year. And getting worse. So if we don't achieve herd immunity to restore normalcy and to get tourism revenues up, we will have a serious problem. We have an obligation to let you know and to ask you to get vaccinated. And I'm hoping that each of you here and every single person in this country who would have gotten vaccinated so far, I want each of you to undertake to take at least one person, one unvaccinated person to get vaccinated. That's all I'm asking of you. If it's a family member or friend, I'm asking each of you to convince at least a single person. And if we're able to achieve that, we should get up to about 60%, which takes us closer to achieving herd immunity. Let us understand, too, that if COVID remains a threat in this country, that the tourists will not come here. They will go elsewhere. If they don't come here, then what do you think is going to happen? Our borrowing options have literally dried up. We are now at the mercy of restoring normalcy as soon as possible, failing which there will be dire consequences. That is the reality. And this is not just only for Antigua and Barbuda. But I'm of the view that we are in a position to provide leadership in this region. And I do not understand what is happening with our people. Ordinarily, Antiguans and Barbudans are known to be very proactive and empathetic people. Don't we care about ourselves? Don't we care about our own health, the health of our children, the health of our neighbors? Do we not care about the viability of this country? So taking a vaccine is an exclusively a personal decision based in your constitutional rights and freedoms. You have no obligation to the wider society. You have no obligation to your children and your children's children. And you know the irony about it? I have observed that practically all of the Caucasians in this country, they've gotten vaccinated. Most of the CARICOM nationals, they've gotten vaccinated. What is it about us as indigenous Antiguans and Barbudans that make us so stubborn that we are literally putting our own development, our health, and certainly the health of our loved ones at risk? And I observe globally as well that the Caucasians in the developed countries, most of them have achieved vaccination rates of about 65%. They're trying to incentivize that additional 10%. But what it is about us, who are far more vulnerable than those wealthy countries, that we believe that we have the luxury of not getting vaccinated. And I understand that there may have been some concerns about the side effects of the vaccinations, but it's well proven that the side effects are minimal. Over 1.3 billion people globally have been vaccinated. Not one person has died of being vaccinated. However, millions of people have died from COVID. You'd have seen what is happening in India as well. So I beseech you, I beg you, my dear people, and I have an obligation so to do as your Prime Minister, to get vaccinated in the interests of the country. It is a moral imperative. It is a social imperative, an economic imperative that each person, unless you have some underlying health condition or medical condition that prevents you from being vaccinated, you have an obligation so to do, so that we can restore normalcy, restore our economy, and certainly to put our people back to work. I hear people who at home, hotel workers, who are arguing that they should not be vaccinated or they will not get vaccinated. There are people on the front lines exposed to individuals coming to this country who could even have one of those deadly strains, the Indian strain, the South African strain, and they're taking a position that they do not wish to get vaccinated. How could that be when you're at great risk? What about if you contract the virus? What about if eventually we get one of those deadly strains and it literally spreads throughout the community? You'll be putting the entire community at risk. Let me get back to the subject at hand, but I felt it was important for me to address this issue because it's the most significant threat facing the people of this country. And I know that Celeste would want me to address that issue, to stand up like a leader, to stand up without fear or favor, and to speak truth to power, and to let the people know what the risks are, and to encourage you to get vaccinated in the public interest.